This is 2017's My Friend Dahmer. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up on a school bus as it goes down a country highway, and it passes a dead cat in the road. Jeffrey spots it from his window in the bus, but the rest of the kids on the bus are interacting with one another while he stares out the window. On the seat across from Jeffrey, John draws some sketches. Soon, Jeffrey spots a runner on the road, and he gets up to go to the back of the bus to watch the runner. When the bus driver spots him, he tells Jeffrey to go back to his seat, and Jeffrey complies. After getting dropped off, Jeffrey stops in his driveway to watch the runner who's caught up. When he gets inside, he finds Joyce in the living room with Mr. Burlman, who's helping to redesign the house for her. Jeffrey heads to the backyard, and he makes fun of Mr. Burlman's condition as he walks through the garden. Later, he walks down the road with a black trash bag, and a couple of kids stop him while they're riding their bikes. They ask him what's in the bag, and he shows them that he picked up the dead cat he saw earlier. He tells them that he's going to take the cat back to his house so he can dissolve it with acid. And when the kids don't believe that he's going to do it, he invites them back to watch. When Dahmer gets to his shed, he puts his gloves on and he starts to work. He pulls the cat out of the bag, and he prepares it by putting it in a jar. The two boys watch as Jeffrey pours the acid in, and they ask him why he does this. He tells them that he simply likes bones and what's inside. When you're alone with the creepy kid in the shed full of jars with dead animals and acid, probably not the best time to call him a weirdo and make fun of him. After one of the kids questions Jeffrey, Jeffrey takes them out of the shed to smash one of the jars open to prove that he's not lying. After the jar breaks, the boys call him a freak, and they run off. At dinner that night, Jeffrey asks his father Lionel if he can get some stronger acid from work, and he tells Jeffrey that he'll consider it. As dinner continues, Lionel tries to convince Jeffrey to make new friends, but he doesn't seem too interested in that. When Jeffrey's brother Dave bites into the chicken, he says that it's still red inside, and Joyce tells them that they still have to eat it. The next day at school, Jeffrey makes his way past all of the other kids as they pull their usual shenanigans, but no one's really too bothered to mess with Dahmer. In science class, Jeffrey conducts himself like a prize pupil, but John is caught drawing his sketches and sent to sit with Jeffrey as his new lab partner. At lunch, Jeff tries to sit at a table with Oliver, and Oliver tries to offer him tickets to his favorite band. Suddenly, a kid shows up to tease Oliver, and Jeffrey walks away from the situation. That evening, Jeffrey goes to his shed, and he looks at his piglet that he took from the science lab. Meanwhile, Joyce and Lionel are arguing with each other, and Lionel tries to point out that Joyce is fresh out of the mental institution. Nature versus nurture. How many of you believe that his mother's mental illness has anything to do with where Jeffrey ended up? Touchy subject, I know, but opening up communication can only educate others. The next day at school, Jeffrey walks away from Oliver as he gets bullied for his sexual preference again. And at the house, Lionel comes home to find that Dave is alone in the house while Jeffrey is in his shed and their mother's MIA. When Lionel finds Joyce in the bed, he tells her that they need to talk about Jeffrey. Afterwards, Lionel takes a trash can out to the shed, and he tosses a lot of Jeff's animal jars in the trash and tells him to do something more normal. When Jeffrey comes home from school the next day, he finds his shed has been destroyed. He gathers some of the bones, and he sits out by the road as the jogger makes his way past him. When he goes back into his room, Lionel comes in to talk to him about the shed. Lionel explains that he gets mad at Jeffrey because he sees too much of himself in him. Could Lionel have been a serial killer too? He might be. His go-to as a replacement for dissolving bones is to lift weights. He gets credit for trying, but he's terrible at figuring things out. Later, Jeffrey goes to the woods, and he sets up a trap with a rock tied to a string. After he coaxes a squirrel to the rock, he drops it on it. Big red flag. Hurting little animals is like the #1 red flag for a killer. The next day at school, Jeffrey acts up a little in class, and he finds out that his classmates like his antics. He does an even bigger show in the hallway between classes, and he gets a whole audience of classmates to laugh at him. Later, John asks Jeffrey if he wants to come sit with the cool kids, and they talk about how they want to use Dahmer as their fearless leader to disrupt the school. Back at home, Jeffrey comes home to tell Joyce about his friends coming over, but he finds her looking for some of her narcotics. Jeffrey tries to tell her to go back to the doctor, but she goes back to her search. Jeffrey tells the guys that they should just hang out outside, and they head back down the road to make fun of a graduate who still lives with his parents. The next day at school, one of the classmates basically asks John if he'll draw her like a Titanic scene. John's basically picking up girls by being Dahmer's friend. Leave it to Dahmer to make a joke out of this, and he draws her like a crime scene outline. Yet another red flag comes when they go fishing after school, and Dahmer cuts a fish open to see what its insides look like. Seriously, who's still being his friend for all of this? One day, Jeffrey brings John over to the house, and his parents are fighting. Joyce embarrasses Jeffrey, and John decides that it's best he just goes home. Jeffrey heads outside to creep on the runner, and he watches him from the bushes. The next day, Jeffrey heads to the grocery store that John works at, and they go through the porno magazines at the front. Jeffrey decides to make a scene at the grocery store, and the manager is furious. John almost ends up getting fired, but he's able to talk his way out of it. When the friends gather outside, Dr. Matthews pulls up, and we see that he's the jogger that Dahmer creeps on. At the house, Lionel comes home to find out that Joyce bought a brand new car, and she financed it even though they don't have the money for it. It's amazing that Lionel hasn't snapped at all. He drinks, but that's about it. Leave it to Jeffrey to take the one thing that Lionel needs to get through the evening. Now Jeffrey's an alcoholic. This won't go well at all. The next day, Jeffrey shows up, and he tells the guys that he quit band. When Fig shows up, Dahmer realizes that he has a like-minded individual in Fig. He takes Fig into the woods, and Fig pulls out his dad's gun. After Fig fires a shot, he offers Jeffrey a turn, but Jeffrey refuses to touch the gun. In school the next day, Jeffrey stumbles into school, and he's very clearly intoxicated. On his walk home that day, he stops to pick up some more roadkill, and he spends the evening cutting it open in the woods. The next night, Jeffrey and his classmates go on their field trip to DC, and he ends up getting roomed with Charlie. Things get really weird when he asks Charlie if their insides are the same color. Charlie seems like the smart one. He stops talking about everything after hearing Dahmer talk about it. At least Jeffrey is questioning things, but you don't question it out loud. The next day, Jeffrey's friends tell him that he couldn't get them a meeting in the White House. But Jeffrey proves them wrong when he manages to get them an actual appointment with the vice president's aide. In turn, they actually end up meeting the vice president, and he tells Jeffrey that he should pursue his dream of going into biology. When they get back to Ohio, Lionel picks Jeffrey up, and he tells him that he actually moved into a motel to get away from Joyce. When Jeffrey gets home, Joyce comes into his room to check on him, but she isn't very comforting about the situation. The next day, Jeffrey goes to see Dr. Matthews, and he tells him that he needs a physical to see if he's sick. Jeffrey starts asking him questions about different fields of medicine. Apparently the physical was too much for Jeffrey, because he goes home and immediately rubs one out. He must have liked the physical a little too much. After the doctor has him cough while grabbing him, he washes his hands and walks right out. He doesn't even say goodbye or anything. I'd imagine that's a little awkward. Jeffrey heads over to his friend's house, and he hears them talking about sleeping with their best friend's mom. Jeffrey isn't bothered by the topic of conversation, but he simply wishes that he had a best friend. The next day, John hangs out with the guys, and they start to question if they're mean to Dahmer for making fun of him. John thinks that if they were too mean, Jeffrey wouldn't hang around. One day at home, Jeffrey hears Joyce talking to a lawyer on the phone about how Lionel is trying to take Dave from her. And he walks out of the house to go to the woods with a dog. Red flags, everyone! Where did this dog even come from? There's been no hint of having a dog. Did he dognap it from a neighbor or something? Amazingly, he can't go through with it. And it makes you wonder how he viewed people since he was able to do it with them. The next day, Joyce goes to drop the kids off with Lionel, and she makes a big scene right in the middle of the parking lot. Jeffrey really starts to fall apart later in his room when he dreams about laying with Dr. Matthews, who's dead. Meanwhile, John and the guys are at a party, and one of the other classmates comes over to make fun of them for Jeffrey ditching them lately. John decides that this is a great time to pay Dahmer to come out and spaz bigger than he's ever spazzed before. The next day at school, John talks to Jeffrey about going to the mall to spaz out big time. But Neil seems to think that they should just leave him alone. Jeffrey agrees to put on the show, and he drinks some beer in the back seat of the car on their way to the mall. I can put some drinks away no problem, but Jeffrey's chugging 3 beers in about 15 seconds. That's both amazing and concerning. Jeffrey's definitely visibly unhinged though. You mean to tell me that John was a driving factor for Jeffrey really losing it? Even John starts to look like he regrets talking Jeffrey into doing this. It's a little late for that though. That night at home, Jeffrey stumbles in to hear that the divorce is final, and Lionel has won the house. Joyce asks Jeffrey to not tell Lionel that she's moving to his grandmother's house. The next day, Jeffrey waits in the bushes with a bat, but Dr. Matthews doesn't show up. Jeffrey takes his aggression out on a nearby tree before leaving. Later on, a couple of kids find a dead dog cut open and left in the woods. The kids at school start talking about the incident, but after Jeffrey hears one of them talk about how he could never get a date for prom, Jeffrey decides to prove him wrong. Jeffrey tries to ask Bridget out, and she only agrees to think about it if he agrees not to drink or be weird. Sure enough, the two of them go to prom together, and Jeffrey's friends take notice. Neil actually comes over to apologize for the other guys asking Jeffrey to do his fit in the mall. And Jeffrey seems to find a little peace in hearing him say that. I don't know if Neil's based on a real person, but it is nice to know that not everyone was a complete jerk. Also, Dahmer's a jerk because he just walked out on Bridget at the prom. She didn't have to go with him. Bridget deserved better. After school the next day, Dahmer makes his way home to find Joyce and David packing up the car to move, and he finds out that they're going to miss his graduation. Joyce couldn't care less though, and they say goodbye before hurrying down the driveway. Jeff heads inside and he throws a fit. Next thing we know, it's graduation day, and Lionel is there with his son. Lionel gives Jeff the car as a graduation present, and they drive off together. That night, John spots Jeffrey walking down the road, and he pulls over to check on him. John offers Jeffrey a ride home, and they talk about John's plans now that he's graduated. When they get to Jeffrey's house, John spots blood under his nails, and he asks if Jeffrey is okay. Jeff assures him that he'll be fine, and John pulls out all of his old sketches of Jeff. Jeff takes one look at them, and he promptly tells John that he doesn't want any of them. Of course, John thinks that this is a great time to try and defend how he enabled Jeff's behavior. Nope, definitely not the time. Jeff gives him an easy way out, though. He straight up tells him that if he has one beer with him, all is forgiven. Wish a lot of things were forgiven that simply. Jeff almost whacks him on the way out of the car, too. John was almost his first human victim. When Jeffrey goes back inside, he starts drinking heavily, and he prepares himself for something. In the morning, he wakes up on the couch, and he promptly heads to the car with a beer in hand. He makes his way down the street, and he picks up a hitchhiker on the side of the road. Fun fact, this man really was his first victim. His name was Stephen Mark Hicks. Jeffrey picks up Hicks, and he tells him that he'd like to hang out with him. Hicks hops in without suspecting any foul play, and he opens a beer with Jeffrey. The two of them drive off down the road, and then the credits roll. It's always weird to see people like Jeffrey portrayed as anything other than the monsters they ended up being. I guess everyone starts somewhere. As for the movie, give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.